TJ and John and Art, and they're here today.
Rusty.
And Rusty, we're going to talk about San Onofre. Okay, and we're really doing this because you are the folks who were the first generation of surfers in California, first real generation, and we're going to record this for posterity.
Well, I didn't see that. The only recall I have is of Corona del Mar along the jetty there, where there was a group of people that all went to San Onofre when finally Lauren and several guys managed to go through the fence down there and everything and got to the beach.
Matt.
Was it Matt?
Lofty.
And that was sort of the beginning of somebody going to San Onofre, wasn't it?
Yeah, Barney Wilkes was one of that.
Yeah, Barney Wilkes.
And Klotz, Vincent Lindbergh.
Yep.
Dexter Wood.
Dexter Wood.
Laholeo. Now there was a neat guy, Laholeo.
Who was he?
Well, he was a strange creature from Long Beach, and he invented Laholeo lotion, best in the land. There was something he mixed up. He got terrible sunburns. He was a light skinned, light hair. And I don't know where he got his name, Laholeo, which in Hawaiian means horse's balls, but that's what everybody called him, Laholeo. And he was one of the first group down there.
How did you hear about it?
Well, I personally started my surfing at Palos Verdes Cove before the war. Student at LHAC in Los Angeles, gym team. Decided I was going to be a diver, went over to the swimming pool. The swimming team was working out. I was a lousy diver, the coach told me, don't bother. But before I left, I got talking to the swimming team. Eddie Bear, Gene Hornbeck, Dutchie Lenkite, Jimmy Reynolds, all on the swimming. And they were talking about their paddleboards they were building to take down to Palos Verdes Cove to learn to surf. And actually had been surfing. And Doc Ball was, although he wasn't in school, he was ahead of us, he was in dental school. He was part of that group. And I got all excited and went down to the cove one Sunday morning and saw what was going on, and I was hooked. So I got my hammer and nail and plywood and built the world's worst paddleboard. It was just dreadful, but it floated. And I rode it for a while and kept sinking. But from then on, it was more and more. Then the Palos Verdes Surfing Club was formed by Doc Ball and Eddie Bear. And Thule Clark and I were the first two people to be invited into beyond the original club members. And we just, surfing got better and better, and we took in more people in the club, and all good surfers. And it just was blooming. There was a Santa Monica surfing club at the time, and there was a Hermosa Beach surfing club, which was primarily Kerwin's at the time. And there used to be a lot of competition, a lot of paddleboard races. And the first year or so, Palos Verdes won them all. Then the Kerwin started to beat us. We quit racing. So anyway, and at that time, I was becoming aware of surfing somewhere besides Palos Verdes Cove, and I heard about San Onofre, and I got talking to some of the guys that had been there. And long story short, why I just started going to Onofre and got in with Barney and all the guys and the Hawaiian music angle. I was playing the ukulele by then and singing Hawaiian songs, and I was a natural. Do a lot of drinking, talk about the women you were going to chase, and go surfing. That was wonderful.
Well, I think we're kind of probably one generation up the line, maybe, from you guys. But anyway, I used to go to Newport Beach and fish from the pier. My uncle would take a bunch of us, Luton and Danae, and we'd go down and fish. And you got to see somebody body surfing off the pier. And we thought, hey, what's that look like fun? So we finally got into body surfing. And then one thing led to another. And this was, for me, this was right after they put the breakwater in at Corona del Mar and ruined the surfing there. Yeah, I didn't go surfing. Anyway, we started out in doing just what you did. We built leaky paddle boards. And,
terrible beasts.
I'll say they're terrible things, and rode straight off of Corona del Mar. Finally, and then that's where all the girls were. They all went from San Ana Junior College, and in fact, we all married some of them, just about. Then we heard about San Onofre. Lauren Harrison, of course, was the guy we followed around, and I listened to him, and he influenced us a lot. And after the paddleboard, we finally got into the balsa redwood. Was that the first next move with the balsa redwood you think we got into? Pacific Homes
Sure.
up there, yeah.
Pacific
And
System.
luckily, Pacific Homes had probably the biggest supply of balsa wood in the world. And luckily, they put them together up there and even had the profile like this cut out. And that made it a heck of a lot easier for us all to shape surfboards, which we did. They had a different shape. I remember a guy to argue about the shapes, local shapes, the shape that we have. And then I think the first pin was put on up in Santa Monica by, what his name?
Tom Blake gets most of
Well,
it.
he had the first one in on it, but I
Did
mean,
he? I thought Tucker did.
Tom Blake in the books is credited with,
Okay.
but the truth as I see it is I was the first one to use a fin. The reason I did, I took a little strip of wood about that long and about that deep, a 1x2, and nailed it up to the bottom of my lousy paddleboard I built, because as soon as you went on an angle, the tail would, hoolie on down, and you go right off the. And I figured, well, if I had like a sailboat has a centerboard, if I had a little something back there that wouldn't let it slide down, it'd work. And to me, in my mind, I've never heard of that before, but I'm glad to give Tom Blake. I'm sure he did use one before I did, but in my experience, I had the first fin I experienced was the one I put on the bottom of that board.
but you know,
I was diagnosed with a goofy spine, and the doctor said the way to fix that is go swimming. So my mother, dad, and I spent a summer at Huntington Beach, where I learned to swim in a saltwater plunge. Do you remember that at Huntington? And then I watched these guys riding those waves, and I learned to body surf. And then I went to Corona Del Mar, where the surf was terrible. I thought, what am I doing at Corona Del Mar when I could just as easily be at Huntington riding waves with shoulders? That's where I ran into John. And who else? I guess Luton, huh?
no, Luton took it up a little later.
Did he?
Yeah, he was in the valley board, but he took up surfing a little later.
Well, Luton had a next to the worst paddleboard in the world, and he let me ride it a couple times at Corona Del Mar when I was learning. And it leaked. And when you took off on the wave, all the water would run to the stern, the bow, and you would burrow.
Yeah.
Waves. Those were terrible waves. There was never a shoulder.
Just a short break one.
Yeah, terrible. How many would you say at 39 and 40, in Southern California surfed? There were guys from San Diego, there were guys up your way,
Mm-hmm.
there were the Santa Ana Orange guys.
Well, I was in surfing Santa Cruz for 38, 39.
Oh, did you?
And they were they were all starting to surf up there then. They're probably, Harry and all those guys,
Yeah.
high school students. And
But how did they get the word? Through you?
no, I think Haran was instrumental. He was up there before I was, going to San Jose State College. And he and Jack Windsor and those guys from Southern California, who were good surfers down there, brought their boards up, started surfing Santa Cruz. And I think that was the impetus for the development of the Santa Cruz boys, just watching Duke and the guys who were there. They were there before I was.
Laguna was no good. Corona Del Mar was not that much better. Huntington had surfboard waves. Dana Point had surfboard waves. San Onofre had surfboard waves. Salt Creek.
Oh, yeah. Salt Creek had good surf.
You remember the first time you went to San Onofre? Or heard about it?
Matt Brown bragged for years that he and Forey Neal found San Onofre. No, he and Lauren found San Onofre. That had to be 32, 33, 34.
Uh-huh.
And they may well have.
I can't remember when
It's 1937, and I was in, just had gotten into high school.
She was.
Barney Robinson and I went down because there was a surfing contest. And I went out and tried to body surf, and it was very difficult. Because first of all, he couldn't touch. And second of all, they feathered so gently. I just couldn't believe how, I finally got one, I couldn't believe after riding Corona del Mar where you go, this thing just,
I don't think many of us kept body stuff. We got into boards. We had too much work for body stuff, wasn't that it?
yeah. The contest that day was won by, that was 1937. Paskowitz was in it.
Peterson was in it.
Peterson.
Thule, I think, was in it.
Thule.
Eddie Bear, I think, was in it.
Eddie Bear. The interesting thing about Eddie Bear is that he was a guy who, when everybody else finally went to solid surfboards, he rode a paddleboard and better than a lot of guys.
And he rode it beautifully.
Let me tell you about Eddie Bear at Dana Point on a giant wave, and I still see him shooting across it this way, and it got him on the line. And pretty soon he came walking back with half his board under his arm.
I've got a picture.
Have you?
Yeah.
I thought that was really outstanding.
Do you remember the first time you saw San Onofre?
Not clearly. No, I don't remember. I just remember. I never was down there with a paddleboard, as I recall. I was there with a surf. I remember I had a surfboard. It was all balsa, I guess, and it had a terrible shape on it, high shape, and the nose didn't go back to the middle. It just sort of scooped, and it did funny things, like purling a lot, you know. And so I just remember kind of doing those things and seeing. I remember it must have been pretty early when I saw it had a tent on the beach. That meant it had to be pretty early, didn't it? And out of the tent came Paskowitz and Taylor. You know?
Yeah, Storm Surf Taylor.
Yeah, they came out of the tent. That's the first time I saw those guys, and here they were. And you know, my friend Paskowitz ever since. We used to talk nutrition and stuff and all that kind of thing. You know? And since then, he's done a heck of a lot more than I have around the world, I guess, from the articles in the paper and stuff, you know. But yeah, there's a character that's a historic character, you might say, down there, for sure.
Do you remember your first time or times at San Onofre?
I really don't, Tim. I really don't. I would say, basically, I was a Palos Verdes Surfing Club member, and that was a pretty serious group, and we had weekly meetings and various rituals, and it was quite. And the antithesis of that was the San Onofre Surfing Club, which was made up. Never had any meetings. All they did was get cheap wine and get their boards, get their guitars, go to San Onofre, and I would fit it in real well. So I was in two worlds. I was in the serious Palos Verdes Surfing Club world, and on weekends I was down there in the summer with the evil doers, Laho Leo, Nellie Bly. Remember Nellie Bly? He wore glasses strung around us because he couldn't see the waves coming. He didn't wear glasses. He had to tie around the string.
When I was just starting, I was surfing with Nellie Bly. Nellie Bly was really blind, and he'd wear glasses when he surfed. Good surfer, extremely good. But fog came in one day, and we got disoriented. And instead of facing the waves, we didn't realize this, but we were facing the beach. And all of a sudden, Nellie said, "Hey kid, get off your board. Get ready to shove through the biggest wave you ever saw." So I dutifully got off my board, got ready to shove through the wave. And it was the cliffs that he saw, which would have been a big wave.
Would have been a mighty big.
Here's another story. Nellie Bly. He's the only guy anybody ever saw, I think, that got on a board out there on his knees, pull his trunk down, and have a ball with him while he paddles along. I can still see him like yesterday doing that. That amazed me. I'm sure it crossed my mind, but there's no problem with it.
Well, what was it like in those days? I'm curious about it. You said it had this kind of spirit about it, huh?
It was capital F, capital U, capital N. It was fun. The surfing was fun, the playing the guitars and singing at night, and the hula dancing, and everything was fun. This was, and in those days, everybody was a surfer, but not the dedicated kind of surfers they have nowadays, where, you know, it's almost religion with some of the kids nowadays. It's so important to them. But we were just having fun. We weren't proving anything or trying to establish anything. We were there because we liked it. We liked each other. We had fun.
You know, that's the story of San Onofre. It'll get kind of gross at times, at night, you know.
Oh yeah, it gets pretty damn gross. You bet. That's one of the best times, especially if the surf is flat that day.
Yeah.
And who played the guitar all the time? You know,
Oh, Barney and Bruce Duncan
Bruce.
and Lauren and
Bruce
I.
was
What did it look like in those days? If you could kind of look back in time.
Hell of a lot like it looks today.
Uh-huh.
Not a lot of difference.
Well, Eddie McBride had that figured out. You know, he said when he had a wet winter and all the water would come down the creek and out there and it'd build sand up way out like that. And then other times it would be the current come along and run the bank way back with it. And they'd find, when they ran way back, they'd find money in the bank walking along, pulling nickels out. Or diamonds. We didn't have quarters in those days, did we? Too poor. But anyway.
Well, it was primitive from the standpoint that we really didn't have much sanitary facilities. We had a canyon called Kukai Canyon, and we had a board rack there. And the boards were safe as if they were in the Fort Knox. Nobody stole things.
Right.
Today they wouldn't last 10 minutes.
What was the entry like to San Onofre in those days?
Well, there was that fence that Lauren cut down a few times.
That was real early. Then they had the little shack where the guy charged 2 bits. What was his name? Glenn just mentioned his name.
Frank Ulrich.
No, he ran the restaurant.
Yeah.
But he controlled that, I think.
He controlled that.
And he had some guy down there that, what was his name? Remember Murphy or something?
I remember Frank.
That we drove by and gave him a quarter and we could go in.
You gave him a dime and he gave you a decal.
A dime, is that all it was?
Yep.
It was a
What, 2 bits overnight?
Yeah, 2 bits overnight. Yeah.
Oh, I see, that's the deal. I don't remember the details. Some of that.
We tried for a while to get down about 3 or 4 in the morning, and nobody was around. We'd get in all right, but then Frank would come stamping down around 10 in the morning and checking everybody for their little decals. And of course, we didn't have one, so we just stayed out in the water. We went away. Then we'd come in.
Well, the three of you came from different places. How did you develop this identity with San Onofre?
Because that's where the good surf was in the summertime.
Word got around, and where else could we go, too, at that time?
The way it was, see, I was living in L.A. at this time, and Palos Verdes Cove was right down there, 15 miles from my house. But it was great in the late fall and winter and spring because it faced the north swell, which come out the Gulf of Alaska, and that's where we got our good surf. But come June, July, that surf quit entirely from the north, and they started coming out of the South Pacific. The big storms, where the big swells were coming from New Zealand and way down there. And San Onofre faces south, so San Onofre was getting the good, late spring, summer, and fall surf because it was facing south. So of course, we guys that wanted to surf good ways, we went to San Onofre in the summer and Palos Verdes Cove in the winter. It was a balance there. Before the war, the activity, we would go down Friday or Saturday morning and spend the Saturday night sleeping in sleeping bags on the beach and surf and go home. But the locus of the group was right out from Kukai Canyon because there were no outhouses then. There was just beach but Kukai Canyon before the atomic plant came ran quite a ways back up, and that's where everybody relieved themselves, whenever. And so where that canyon hit the beach, we would all be just kind of spotted around that way. And Kukai Canyon's it's up above Old Man's just a little bit.
Above Old Man's?
Above Old
Pretty
Man's.
much.
Not very much, but it's not below Old Man's.
Oh, no.
Anyway.
Almost opposite.
And what's happened through the years, especially after the war, why there was a gradual, slow moving south. Then some of them went up to the point, but most of us old timers slowly over the years were moving south. We're down now to the volleyball courts, and it seems to have stopped there for a while.
You said that there was just a real loose sense of a club there. How did the club develop?
The club didn't develop; it stayed loose.
Well, there really wasn't a San Onofre surf. There really wasn't a San Onofre.
No, but when there was, you know,
Had
I
a
told you before the
contest.
war, there was a lot of contests, and a lot of times you enter the contest as a club, like Santa Monica, Hermosa, Palos Verdes, and for a number, Pete Peterson, although he's from Santa Monica, he would compete with the San Onofre group. But again, as I put out there, it's completely loose. There was there were no bylaws, there were no constitution, no charter. Palos Verdes had all this crap. But there's none of that for San Onofre. They couldn't be bothered. So
In
anyway.
1939, a number of the professional surfers in Orange County got together and formed a club called the Cocala Surf Riders. The president was John Waters. The vice president was Stanford Charles King, and I was a treasurer and secretary. We had 19 members. We had a hooded sweatshirt with our name on the back, which we got from the Palos Verdes Surfing Club. We never entered a paddling race. We never ever entered a contest as a club. But we had license plates. Do you have that with you?
So that, it's in the book, I think.
These were the license plates that, did Bradford make those?
Yeah, he painted these individually. It's like better if I take it out of here. He painted these individually for the members. He made quite a few of them. It's the only one in existence at the moment. So that was fun for a while, but like I say, it didn't amount to much.
Now don't say that.
Well, socially.
In Arthur's memory, it amounted to much.
You bet.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
They would have a surfing contest every summer, and the object of the did you ever enter?
No, I didn't like contests. I'm not a competitor. I like to surf, but I don't like to compete to surf.
You didn't want to lose, is what you did.
Oh, I knew I'd lose. With Pete Peterson and Lauren there, I knew I wouldn't win anything.
The surfing contest would they anchor a board out, a buoy out about where the waves started to form, and everybody had to be down toward San Diego, south of this buoy, and the fast paddlers could go out and hold on to the buoy, and then everybody would hold hands like this. And the guy who made the most points was the guy who slid the farthest left. And I don't like to brag, but I got 7th in 1940, behind Peterson, Harrison, Haskowitz, Duke Hanamoku. One of our members was a guy by the name of Lawrence Wayne Dresser, who built a hollow surfboard out of a power pole, and he put 500,000 screws on the deck, and it was the worst board in the world. And a round bottom. You've ridden it.
Now, who was the first girl surfer? You know, the first woman surfer there was a champion.
In our area?
Yeah, that was Buddy Morrissey's wife, wasn't it?
Marianne.
Marianne.
She started up at the coast, didn't she?
Mm-hmm. But she was the only woman that surfed, wasn't she, at that time?
At that time. There were a couple of gals that would have liked to surf, but they just couldn't handle the heavy boards, you know. But Marianne's, I got a hold of a light balsa for Marianne, about 10 feet long, which was very short for that time.
Her name was Mary Ann Hawkins.
Yeah. And I went with her pretty steady for about 6 months a year. But I painted this board white, and I've got some pictures in my album of her and me on a pretty good sized wave together, you know, riding together. And I also got a picture of her and me and Buddy Morrissey, that's before he married her, on the wave, and Dexter, all the four of us at Palos Verdes.
Oh, that would be neat.
She was a hell of a body surfer. I couldn't begin to body surf like Marianne. She was just a whiz. And she also was quite a competitive swimmer. She had just a whole room full of trophies for swimming for various organizations.
How about that?
Marianne did a lot of new movie work for different South Pacific pictures on, stunt type stuff. She was very good in the water.
One of the things that started me was my folks took the Los Angeles Times, and in those days they had what they called a Gravure section, which was a brown and white, closest thing to color that they had in those days. And there was an article, a fellow by the name of Jimmy Reynolds, a fellow by the name of Thule Clark, and E.J. somebody. And here he is, these guys, the three guys on a wave, and I thought, man, that is the keenest thing. That's one of the things that started me. That was Palos Verdes.
Doc Ball took an awful lot of good pictures of Palos Verdes with surfing. I was fortunate to get our hands on a lot of them. And I got one. He sure did a lot for photography and surfing. He really was he was the #1 man.
And he had the camera in a waterproof wood box?
Yeah, he built himself. Doc was a dentist, and he was real excellent with doing minute, fine work, and he would build these things for his camera, with valves for changing the. He used to use a Graflex, which was a plate something, but it was he could operate the thing. He could take a picture out. He'd take it out on his board with him. And he'd take a picture, then he could arrange for another picture to come up by. And it wasn't easy like it is now, I guess, with its little cameras and everything was electronic. It was all mechanical. He took a lot of good pictures.
Ron Drummond, he figured in a lot of stuff around too, with his kayaks and his canoes.
And he had a body surfing portion of his trip to Africa. And they had it at Huntington Beach Union High School. We heard about it and went to the assembly. It was a school assembly. We weren't supposed to do. A bunch of us, about 5 of us from Santa Ana. And that's it, when I really saw a good body surfing people. One of the guys whom we all used to emulate to a degree before I knew EJ was Matt Brown, who they discovered he had diabetes when he was 12, and they gave him 2 years. And he made it till he was about 73, I think, maybe. But he was one of the smoothest surfers.
Talk a little bit about surfing style in those days. You say a smooth surfer.
Now that we got him on the show, let me tell you what I picture him doing, what he did. He could line his board, the wave coming, he'd be like this, and he'd go like this, and he'd be in the wave.
Wouldn't even
paddle
paddle
or anything.
Wouldn't
He'd
even
just slide right in without paddling. And then he's under control all the way.
Did you see do that?
Matt,
Matt Brown,
yeah,
yeah.
he used to be able to do that. I thought that was pretty neat.
That's timing, real good timing. Pete Peterson used to be able to do that.
Did he? Yeah.
Just lean forward and kick with both feet as he leaned forward and push against the water, and away he went.
It's interesting to see him do that.
Well, but your question about surfing style or technique back then, everybody more or less surfed like everybody else in my memory. I mean, there was no violent, like you get a kid now that's going zip, 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 and another one that's just doing toes in the nose. There's a lot of different ways you could show off how good you are. But I think back then, Art, in the 30s, everybody surfed pretty much. Those big heavy boards, you couldn't do much with them.
Except Buddy Morrison. I used to love to watch
Buddy
him.
used to.
He liked his skiing, didn't he, kind of?
Buddy was like, and what Buddy could do, and the reason he could do it, as far as I mean, was his special. He built them himself, solid cedar boards, and they were different than. Remember the shape of the board, the old Citizen Home. They were pretty round, and they slowly came down to a taper and a square here. But Buddy would build them so the nose came fairly sharp around. When they hit the widest point, they came straight parallel down to about 3 feet from the tail. Then they cut in, which gave him that extra flotation and stability. And he also sharpened the edges so that he was the only guy in his time I'd ever seen do it. Now they all do, everybody does. But he could, and all of us, when we'd pick up a pretty good size wave, ride it till it started to break, then we'd have to drag foot and straighten out, so we went in straight with the soup. But Buddy, with his type of board and he was a rather short fella, and his surfing technique, he would hit that soup and just keep right on sliding it. And he was the only guy that could do that.
He was
the only guy that could do that.
And he did it in halfway in, so he rode it, and you could watch him easy too, couldn't you?
And to me, I'm still a little amazed at Buddy designing that board and being able to ride it and slide soup, because none of us could slide soup. If you tried to do it on our board, you were just wiped out.
But he stood as if he were skiing.
Yeah.
He had both his feet together.
Sort of like this, yeah. Warnie Miller would ski. Warnie Miller would surf like he skied. He sort of, you know.
Well, thinking about surfing, what memory stands out in your mind about San Onofre?
It was difficult to get out.
I was going to say that too.
We've timed people going out, and a half hour was not unusual if you got out. Augie Andresen was the only person who hair never got wet, because he'd go through a breaking wave. He had black wiry hair. He'd shake his head like that. It was dry.
Yeah.
Well, right or wrong, this is how I remember that the surf we used to get on occasion before the war and after the war for some. If it came a big swell from, say, the South Pacific was coming through, and it was a good south swell, it was just incredibly good. It was just, we get 6, 8 foot surf, you know, way overhead, and if you did the least bit of timing, you would go up a little above Old Man's. There used to be a channel after it, and the way that angle of that south swell would come in, it would be breaking down here, and you'd pick them up way down, and just the thing would just hold like that over your head, and you just went left and went and went and went, and you could get out in this sort of channel even on a big day. It was amazing. True, if it was coming from a different angle and or Chubasco type storm surf, that would really, you know, collapse and just like you say, just give you a bad time getting out.
But nobody went right.
No.
Seldom.
Seldom, because a good swell.
Because you were sliding towards the channel so that you could paddle back out easily.
That's right. But that doesn't exist anymore.
No.
That just isn't that way anymore. I used to walk up a lot into that channel and get out on a day you couldn't have gotten out in the middle or lower or the southern part. But you can't do that anymore. You just get walked just like you would anywhere else.
One of the places that was so good at San Onofre was called the Low Tide Hole, and at a low tide with the big surf, beautiful, beautiful waves. So well formed, weren't they?
Yeah, they were well formed. They were awfully fat waves. So they were big, but they were fat. They weren't. They didn't get very fast. They didn't.
But you went right there, didn't you?
Broke way up. Larson used to go out there a lot.
This is where this picture was taken.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Going right. And then there wasn't much good where we used to go.
Nobody went left. Everybody went right
That was the height.
towards the channel.
But what I remember is more people. I can still visualize certain people rather than waves. And there was an outstanding guy, well, 2 real outstanding guys. And one of them was the Hawaiian, kind of a big Hawaiian guy from Las Vegas. I was wondering if any of you guys know who that might have been. And he'd get out there and he would walk on his board up to the nose, casually, back up casually, and the board would turn, and he'd go down that way. He never bent over or anything. He just walked around like he was walking on the street. Now, who was that guy?
What year would that have been approximately?
Well, gosh, I wish I could guess, but I can't
Was
guess.
it before the war or after the war?
Well, I think it was before the war.
Could have been Puake Aloha. Big black
No, but no,
boy.
he was a well-built guy. Puake kind of fat, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was pretty heavy.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Puake, but I've seen him surf too. But this guy, he had it mastered. Like he was walking along the street.
It wasn't Moroni. he was a musician too. He was a,
Well, does he look dark and like a Hawaiian?
but he was much more well built. He was dark.
Was he a Hawaiian?
Yes, he was a Hawaiian.
I wonder if that's who it was.
Moroni Madera.
Was he pretty smooth like that?
Oh yeah, he was. Yeah, he was.
Maybe that's who it was then, because he was outstanding. I can still see him doing that. You know? So,
Speaking of musicians, there was a fellow who was called Hal the Sundown Surfer. Remember him?
Yeah, sure.
Who allegedly played with Guy Lombardo?
Yeah, I remember that.
And he'd come down, he had a beautiful board, and he had, where the board ended like this, he had had somebody make him a brass holding unit so that he could get off his board, turn it upside down to go through a wave, and do this. And I've seen him 50,000 times going backward on his back, 9,000 miles an hour. Hal the Sundown Surfer.
he brought that board over to the ranch, and he wanted me to reshape it or refinish it. I don't know which it did. I remember I worked on it for a while. And he's really a nice guy, you know, real laid-back guy and considerate type person.
Al Lilly and I bought blanks from Pacific System Homes in 1940, and we took him to John's surfing shop emporium, which was a building on his uncle's ranch, your mom's ranch.
The mold shop, actually. That Larson taught me how to make molds so I could go surfing when I delivered.
And John shaped both boards, and he charged me 20, and he was afraid to charge Hal anything, so Hal gave him a pair of shoes.
Is that what happened? Yeah, I wasn't a businessman, that's for sure.
And those boards were 11 feet long, and they each weighed about 90 pounds.
That's about right.
And the interesting thing about those boards in those days, once you got them underway, you could really get into waves. It wasn't this. You had a lot of momentum, and you could coast in the waves, couldn't you?
Yes, you could. Yeah,
I'm going to
Whatever
ask
you
you.
wanna
I'm
do.
going to ask you what you remember as the most perfect day at San Onofre.
It's the perfect day, typo, and the George Quake Yoki figuring was out there with a coffee can with a little brownie camera in it, and with the lid up, and took that picture with a vacuum and survived. So that's how we got that picture in those days. It was the clearest picture in the world to recognize it. We took a few other various things that day.
John, what made it a perfect day?
Oh, it was just Yoki and I there for one thing. It was a perfectly glassy day. You know, it wasn't a ripple on the water. The waves were absolutely perfect. Couldn't move. You had to get up and go. You know, nowadays you look for trouble because that's how you do it. In those days we wanted to get away from the wave. You know. In those days you want to get involved. I mean, nowadays you get involved with what you can and see that. So that's a different world too. So that's a good thing come up with at the moment.
Tom, I'll have to say I can't help you because I have no idea what my best day was. There were lots of best days, just lots of best days. You get a big sound swell and you get glassy conditions and a warm sun. You get your friends on the beach. You know you're going to be playing guitar and drinking wine in a little while, you know, and partying. That's the best day. I mean, there's a lot of those days, and I couldn't select one from the others being better or worse. It just was all wonderful. Really, it just was all wonderful. Oh, yeah, one exciting day for me, and it's exciting in a sense. It was a great day. It was in July. It was pretty glassy, hot sun, overhead surf. Lots of people, Frenchy Johan, everybody was partying. And I had been out 2 or 3, 4 hours, I guess, just riding, you know, heavy boards before the foam ran. And this fella, this Hawaiian musician, good surfer, Moroni Madera, was out too. And so I decided to send him to. So I took a left and, you know, rode up to where it was breaking ice, leveled off. And as I leveled off, I realized right next to it was Moroni Madera. And we were getting in, you know, fairly close to the beach, no problems. You know, we're just going to ride the soup up to the sand and get off. And right about then, Moroni says, out of a clear sky, EJ, let's go, there's a lot of people on the beach, it's a beautiful day, July. EJ, let's go tandem for the gang on the beach, something funny. So before I really didn't want to, I was tired, I wanted to just get in the beach. He stepped over in my board, and when he did, I can reconstruct this from what had happened. My board turned up an edge, and it had redwood rails. And when it did that, I lost my balance and fell, and right on the point of my hip. And as soon as I did that and went underwater, I had this real shocking, severe pain in my hip area. So I was close enough to shore that I just kind of got myself in. Maroney went on in. And when I got up to the shoreline, I couldn't stand. I couldn't get up. And so Nage, who was relative of Luton's, Nesbitt, Lonnie Nesbitt, big, husky, good-looking guy, he saw us having trouble. So he came down the water's edge and walked into where I was and just picked me up in his arms like a baby. He carried me up to the grass shack and then stuck me there. And everybody said, oh, you got Charlie horse or something. But they started trying to work my leg. It just hurt too much. So after about 3 hours of going into the shop, they loaded me and took me on home. That time I lived in Laguna Beach, and a lot of stairs up, and Joe saw them, whoever brought me home, saw me down there trying to get me out of the car. Said, what's wrong with EJ? He said, he can't walk. I said, don't bring him up these steps. Keep him there. So phoned the local doctor, and he agreed to meet us in his office. X-rayed the hip, and the bone was driven in, that cervix was driven together. So I ended up with a big piece of metal in my hip. 30 days in the Veterans Hospital. But that was not my happiest day.
I didn't know about that.
You did perfect day.
It was shocking.
1951 in August. Beautiful, hot, glassy day. 6 or 7 feet, great wind. And a friend of mine from college, his name was Elmer Hinckley, reshaped his board so that he had a V in the nose, because a dear friend of his by the name of John Francis Huckins reshaped his board in the islands, and he conned Hinckley into doing it on his board. In other words, instead of having a V on the stern, he made a V on the bow so that in essence you had a fin here. And he said, here, go ahead and try this. So I got in the wave, and I set a left, and I smoked, just parallel the wave, because I had these, in essence, 2 fins. Then I tried to turn it, and I couldn't turn it. I ultimately got in the back far enough so that I could turn it. Well, in talking to Hinckley, who was a 220 and a 440-yard swimmer as a dear friend, he said he was going to Malibu the next day. The next day it came. He was telling me about a date with this lovely lady, and he went to Malibu. And in those days, if you can believe this, in Malibu, left the car open. And went surfing and disappeared. The girl got worried that night because he didn't show. And 1 week later, his body turned up, all bruised and eaten by some of the fish. And they know exactly what happened in Malibu. He got locked in on that right, couldn't turn it, blam. We had no leashes, of course, did we? And that board hit him in cold cut. It's all like best I can.
Oshier?
Yeah, taking somebody climbing.
Jack White.
Yeah. And that's when they found him. The little climbing or
Larson. I was there that day. I was in the water. And they were out camping, and they got a nice wave and rode a part way and fell, you fall. And Jack didn't come up, and the girl did. And they found Jack about 3 days later down the beach. And he was he was a wrestler at USC, a good physical specimen.
Nice guy.
Yeah, nice guy.
I had heard that the decal, the guy in the decal, was done by Don Smith, and he used him as a,
Could have been. I know Don Smith needed the cap.
when?
Oh, gee, wow. It's been back in the 50s, I guess.
When they first started the San Onofre.
Yeah, when they started
This was after the war. You talk about before the war and after the war. How did things change after the war?
Really, well, we had to go to the meeting. The meeting, where we could get in there.
I was gone. I didn't surf for about 3
You
years.
remember that, Arthur? We had to search the heat.
I got in San Onofre.
No, they closed down.
But I get in. I was in the United States Navy. That's all it took was a nice idea.
Did they let you stay?
Yep.
They did.
Well, I was protected on the shore by, what's that strong
Hey,
Gene who?
Hornbeck.
He patrolled the beach for the Coast Guard.
so did they. They was in a station there too, and stuff like that.
Who?
Hey, Lonnie, that
Oh, was he?
he was there too. It was amazing. Those guys end up there. Other
guys.
but
None of the guys I didn't accomplish that. I was in Texas. They were on the beach of Onofre. How do you do it?
Well, what was it like when you came back? Was it the same? Was it different?
It came back. When they came back, it started out the same pretty much. It was still the same boards left over from before the war. You know, we started writing again, and then Simmons showed up and started modifying and lightening the boards and all. Then a slow transition took in. I was one of the last holdouts. Glue on the foam, glue on stick with those good, heavy, solid, dependable square-tailed resins. But like I fought the onslaught of wetsuits to the bitter end. I fought the onslaught of leashes. I didn't want things. I liked the way they were, but these new things were coming, and eventually I would break down and try them, and they sure as hell were hell.
Well, that Simmons here revolutionized those things.
Yeah, he started the big revolution. I give him that. And a weirder guy, I guess, never existed. I never talked to him even.
Who was this?
Simmons, Bob Simmons.
He was a graduate of Caltech,
Yes, he was.
or I don't know if he graduated, I don't think he did. But he had all kinds of plans from the standpoint of the hydraulics of the board going through the water, and he came up with a spoon nose, didn't he?
Weird looking thing.
Yeah, but
It was a transitional thing.
yeah, well, Chris Watson changed his board like this guy Simmons was killed where?
La Jolla,
Uh-oh.
women's set. Because he was a real loner, a real strange guy. He had a beat up old car. Go ahead, tell the story about him. His old car, being an engineer, he decided that four-wheel brakes were not necessary. So he disconnected two of his four-wheel brakes, so he had two-wheel brakes. And got along fine. But I guess he was in La Jolla one day, went out alone in a big day, and
I'd like to just mention the fact that when we were kids growing up and coming to San Onofre, John and I and Faust and Tove and King and Skinny Dog Morrison, Lyle Anderson, Bob Jacobs, we'd go down, we'd go down and bring lunches, or we'd bring food to stay all night. And the San Diego guys would come up, and they were the nicest guys. Really, really nice guys. And they'd come up with little foot lockers full of food, with locks. Because they figured that they would, one of them would steal from the others. That always made an impression on me, that these guys who were really nice guys worked with.
yeah.
That's funny. That's crazy. Well, Lauren actually got things going too with the foam board, made the first foam board in those concrete molds on the barn.
Who did?
Lauren did. And I remember that company made the foam, the big company. They were down looking at it. They'd never seen anybody do that before. So they came in and looked at that and wondered about it and everything. did it first, you know, he got the credit for it. Started also the outrigger, the guy that dug the outrigger out of that big sycamore tree back up the canyon, San Onofre Canyon.
And he's the one guy who made a 14-foot tandem paddleboard. Did you ever see that? Surfboard out of a power pole. You remember that great big long thing he had?
I've seen it, but I don't know.
Remember, Jim?
I wonder if it's in the museum here in San Clemente. You know, they had that big long boat there. I wonder if that was it. Did you notice? You were in the museum, weren't you, when they had the exhibit there? That big long boat. They might have seen it. It's a sure long one.
No, but they've gotten away from surfing. They play more volleyball than they do surfing.
We gotta do something.
But from the standpoint of volleyball at San Onofre, what was the doctor's name who was nailed on the Yangtze River Patrol? Dokes?
Dokes,
yeah. He and maybe Dexter Wood swiped, whoever it was, or a bunch of those guys, swiped a volleyball net and got a couple of poles. We put a little volleyball court where north of Middle Beach is.
Yeah, there was one up there.
Yep, yep. And a whole bunch of guys from LA, and where's Benny from?
That's, I think, Huntington Park.
Huntington Park, but he and...
Nellie Bly was from there.
Was he?
I think so, yes.
Well, Joe Levy was.
Yeah. And Buddy Lytle? Billy Lytle?
Billy Light.
Billy Lytle.
And we had pickup games. Nobody knew how to play the game.
Nobody does yet.
You guys.
The road ended right about at Old Man's.
Well, just below Old Man's, about 100 yards or so below the existing volleyball course now, there used to be a little bungalow, sort of a two-room little house in a sense, down there, all but sitting by itself. And we always call it the Colonel's house because we were told somewhere along that that's where the Colonel came by with the. But all of a sudden that house was gone, so I don't know whatever.
But that wasn't before the war.
So that was had to be after the war.
Yeah.
You don't know where the church, or is that where you're talking about that? Or
No, down below, south, towards the atomic bomb.
Is that right? I didn't remember that.
There was a Catholic church
That church.
that is where the recreation area is for Camp Pendleton now. And that's the way we got in. Can you remember how we got in? We turned off the Coast Highway where?
Right there at the San Onofre Cafe, and there was a depot there, you know, a warehouse depot type thing. And when you turn off the Pacific Coast Highway at the San Onofre Cafe, and the depot was across the street from that, you went right over the railroad tracks, and there was no electric signals or no lights. It was just a railroad track, and you better not be on it when the train came by because it went awful fast. I guess Dexter Wood almost got it one night.
Did he?
He was drunk as usual coming in, you know, 3 or 4 in the morning, and I guess the train. Oh, that's just.
This was the original sanitary engineer at San Onofre. He and John Francis Hutchins.
And we ran a tight ship, I'll tell you. I hired my son for 3 days and fired him right away. He wasn't sweating enough. His hands weren't sore.
When did you start?
Get rid of the dead wood, you know, when you're running a ship like that.
I'm curious. When did you start the cleaning up of the beach? When did the club start paying somebody to be in charge of it?
Huckleberry was number one. He started that.
60s?
Probably, yeah, I don't think so. Remember they had those big steel dumpsters parked, several of them along the beach? And we had that cart we'd roll the barrels in and up the ramp and dump them. Oh, what a job. Great job.
And how about the gate guard? When did they start having a gate guard? Well, you guys
Close at
said
the same time, I think. Remember, before the gate guard, they had this big lock and a chain, and everybody had keys. But then I think the Marine Corps felt they're being treated one too much, so that's why they did the gate guard. But I just don't know when Huck started that. On the first job that opened up that he took. Keep the beach back.
Early
Yeah, early 50s. then when he left, I took over, and I ran it until the time when the state took over from the club. And I thought, gee, maybe I better stick with what I got. And so I got a job with the state for the coming year. And I didn't like that a bit because I was no longer boss.
I was thinking the other day that of the crummy days that we go on.
Oh, yeah.
We're just so hungry to ride away. It was so much fun.
It was so miserable. It was cold and wet.
Do you remember a Santana Day? Does a Santana Day stick out in your mind at all?
They're all good.
Yeah.
Nothing I can't remember special days.
They all flow together.
They flow together, right?
Okay.
And it's a pleasant flow.
Yeah.
A happy flow. A glow to it.
Armistice Day, year after year after year, Santa Ana Junior College played Fullerton Junior College. And it was always a terrible, terrible decision to make. The Santa Ana's up, the surf's up. Do we go watch Hal Lilly play football, or do we go to Norfolk? Because you couldn't do both. The cars, you can't zip down like you can now.
Another thing is that you think about that, there weren't any girls down there. You know, they were all pretty much boys. There weren't hardly any girls early in the game. They finally kind of showing up there.
Well, now wait a minute. I'll take exception to that.
Hang on. Right?
You knew he would.
Now, I'm thinking now about 1937, 38. There was an entire group of girls called the San Onofre Surfing Wahinis. Several of them were lady friends off and on, but there were others. Marianne was one of them. Irene Siobhan, Marion Siobhan, Dorothy Hackett.
Not at Norfolk.
Absolutely.
That was before our time.
Jean Foote. Jean Olson. I used to go with her. I used to take Eleanor Larson down there. Sleep bag. It's a fun time. We play music so long and stay up so late and drink so much booze, we couldn't do much good with it with the lady friend in the sleeping bag. You just do it. These San Onofre Surfing Wahinis, they even had sweatshirts with a name on their backs, but they weren't much in the water. On a real small day, we'd carry a board down, they would paddle it out and back, but none of them ever.
What was
Marianne was the only one that really surfed.
What was Elmer's last name who was such a good hula?
Eleanor Roach. Cutie. She was Klaus's. In fact, she married Klaus.
That's right.
She married just a cutie. I hope I have disabused you of the concept there weren't any ladies on the beach in San Onofre the other day, because if you still believe that, you're believing in error.
I remember.
You're against error.
I remember Walt Harrington's wife.
Yeah, Maggie.
She was there.
But Kay Merrill was down there in the early days.
Yeah.
Betty's wife.
He was there. And
That before the war.
yeah.
Was she?
Kay,
Kay was? They were they married then? Oh, I didn't know. Elmer Bowl?
Children ran around with her for a while. And 14 to a minute she was on. Well, she early in life turned on.
I wish I had known. She should be
Klutz was a great surfer. He was an early surfer in that he surfed Corona del Mar.
Mm-hmm.
And each weekend he'd reside at the Newport Beach jail.
He had a drinking problem.
Year after year after year.
But between Barney and Klotz and the drinking at Onofre, it was pretty sad, really. They just,
Barney Wilkes was the only guy that I have ever seen who would walk down the road on an angle, defying gravity, and think we'd fall. The fashion of eating dinner down there occurred after the war because it was a chore. We lived in Costa Mesa, and it was a chore to drive from San Onofre to Costa Mesa because of all of the traffic coming from Mexico about the dinner time. So we evolved taking dinner so that we could go back home about 9 o'clock and miss all the traffic. That's how that started.
You use the word dancing to a different drummer. Did you feel like that in those days of jazz?
Not really gave it much thought or constantly, but I felt that I was in a different culture, a different society than most people that I've run into at school or around about. I thought that it was the people I was associating with, both the Californians and the Onofre, were just wonderful people. I just enjoyed them immensely, and they seemed to enjoy me. And it was the word "fun" comes up again. It was fun.
We hung around where we belonged, it seems like, didn't we? We belonged. That's why we hung around. We kind of felt we belonged in this group. And
Sure.
get in the dance.
Well, we were unique. The rest of these dummies didn't surf.
That's it.
And what was unique about it?
It was like a fraternity. Kind of a loosely knit fraternity. Everybody knew everybody. Intimately. And I don't recall of any necessary battles, do you?
They were strangers. We weren't strangers. The people that we didn't know were strangers.
Yep.
I mean, and philosophically and all that.
You know, I was wondering about your companies in the early with our stuff. I wonder if people that have the attraction and the interest and the desire to surf and become surfers and become avid surfers and stay that way aren't a little bit of a type of a breed of a human being, one of many breeds type, that people that are drawn to surfing are people that maybe tend to get along better because they both are the basic thing they're both appreciating and loving and all that. And well, maybe a tennis player might be with his group, or a mountain climber might be with their group. But I think a group of surfers is kind of, there's a little electricity flowing around between their thinking, what they like to do and all. And this is a very nebulous concept. But,
No, but it's good.
I think there's something about it. Something might be true about it.
What is it about San Onofre that's special to you?
Freedom.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean?
Clearly, there was no limit on how long you could stay at San Onofre. All you had to do was pay. You could set up tents. Nobody really had bands in those days.
No,
Old Ed, I guess,
yeah, funny thing.
kind of a funny little thing. But 10 cents for the day or 2 bits overnight. And I think there's probably a weekly rate, wasn't there?
I don't think anybody ever could stay down.
Yeah, you can stay.
Yeah, but I mean, I think most of us had jobs.
Yeah, sure.
School was young, we had to report back to the big city.
What about primitive?
Yeah, well, no apartment houses along there, no beach houses, no permanent trailers or anything, and the beach comes and goes with the currents and stuff that goes out and back in, and it's just it's like you might go somewhere else in an island somewhere that has not been developed.
It's well said.
And you just, you're like you want to be, really. You're escaping from all this congestion up here that you don't like.
When there was no control, you were on your own, and if you screwed up, you did end up in jail. Is that true?
We're all pretty independent, you know, more so than
Independent in what way?
I think we can do our own thing by ourselves, or we're in a small group, but not joining crowds and doing things in a crowd, at least on the beach. I suppose people went to ball games and stuff like that. But on the beach, I think they had our own thinking and whatnot. I don't know. I felt that way anyway, and I know a lot of people seem to feel that way too. You know, that they're free to be themselves.
How did the beach life change after the war?
It was okay, I guess. Just more people, I find.
Well, there were more people for one thing. A lot more people than there were when we were before the war.
But here's the outstanding thing about San Onofre, I think, of families. Almost everybody in San Onofre had a family. The kids were close to them. The kids never acted like kids. They acted like they could talk to adults as well as they could. You know how it is. And that's how it was. And we all raised good kids, even though we were a bunch of bums in the eyes of the general public.
Bunch of bums.
You remember when you were a bum?
What?
But anyhow, we turned out to be good families. And I'm proud of my family. You know, you guys are too.
Yes, I am.
We did all right that way.
And I think, I'll say this for the San Onofre Serving Club, I think they're doing a good job of doing their best.